Hello, 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 universe. Welcome to another Continuing Conversations. I'm Michael Dismuke, a freelance writer for Star Trek Adventures RPG, lead writer on Captain's Log, solo RPG, and of course a blogger on Continuing Missions, which is the #1 site for Star Trek Adventures and Captain's Log. This show would not be a show without my estimable, did I pronounce it right this time, co-host Jim Johnson.
Yeah, everybody, Jim Johnson. I am the project manager and line editor for the Star Trek Adventures RPG and the Captain's Log solo RPG, both published by Modiphius Entertainment, and co-host on this here show for many, many years, many episodes now, and with Michael, and having a lot of fun with it. We're always finding new things to talk about related to Star Trek Adventures, Star Trek role-playing games in general. And I think we've got a good show lined up for you tonight with a great guest. He's new to us, so without more ado, Alex, please introduce yourself.
Yeah, so my name is Alex, and I am a professional game master running games on startplaying.games. I run a bunch of systems, including Star Trek, and yeah, that's what I do. I just kind of put together experiences and make myself available to make memories with people.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and I'll get into how great he was in a moment. But you're a first-time guest, so Jim has to do the Jim questions.
That's not just the Jim questions. I think at this point it's our questions. You just let me do it. But yeah, as a new guest, we always like to ask our guests two questions. Number one is, who is your favorite Star Trek character from all across the franchise? And of all the franchise, which is your favorite series if you had to pick one?
Okay. These are both so hard questions. I feel like favorite character is probably changing, but right now I've been kind of partial to Geordi LaForge. Just because like I was watching a few of the TNG episodes recently, and he has this kind of like he almost kind of feels like he's in the background of a lot of the action sometimes, but like he has this kind of character growth, especially near the late end. A lot of the characters really develop near the end of the later seasons, but he kind of like flies under the radar a lot of the time, but then kind of becomes this like kind of fairly deep character kind of without you really noticing. And I was kind of like newly appreciating that now, if that makes sense.
Yeah, he's so that's totally comfortable. He's swag, man. He's just like straight Enterprise swag.
Yeah. And favorite series, I want to say it's probably Lower Decks right now. I'm a really big fan of a lot of the new Trek, I guess, like really like Strange New Worlds. But Lower Decks is the one. For a really long time I was like terrified of running Star Trek RPGs because I was like, there's no way that I can get the science right, and there's so much like people know so much about Star Trek and they know more than me, and they'll just well actually like call me out on stuff I don't know, or I'll get stuff wrong. Like I was really afraid of like running like a convincing science fiction basically, because I didn't know if I could like get people to suspend their disbelief with the science, right? Like I knew I could do magic, I can just say it's magic, but it was like Star Trek, I was like, people aren't going to believe me when I say it's tachyons. But Lower Decks, and then the other thing was like Star Trek has so many like my favorite episodes are really serious. There's like the trial of Data, and like the There Are Four Lights episode, like really kind of dramatic episodes. I was like, I don't know if I can pull off scenes that are like that heavy and like serious and like impactful, and I don't know if I can do it. And Lower Decks, when I watched it, I was like, I can do this. I can totally do this, and it's good, and it feels like Star Trek still, and it inspired me so much to just start running that kind of game.
I mean, heck, you changed your whole wardrobe to dress like them.
Yeah.
And I think some of those topics you brought up we'll be talking about tonight based on the agenda I saw. So that's really cool, really interesting stuff, Alex. Thank you. And extra bonus question, only because you said that Geordi is your favorite character. Sub question to that, I have to ask, Do you prefer Jordy with the beard or without the beard? Because there was a couple episodes where they tried
Oh,
Jordy with the beard, and the
yeah.
producers decided they didn't care for it. So what's your take on it? Did you prefer Jordy with or without?
No, I think it's got to be Jordy without the beard. No beard, because
Well, then I
like
got.
he does things by the book, and like kind of a straight edge guy, and I feel like he'd be the kind of person that gets up in the morning and like remembers to shave every day because that's what you're supposed to do or something like that.
Well, then
There you go.
follow up to the follow up question: visor or no visor, Jordy?
But
Mm,
I definitely kind of prefer the visor's more iconic, and I usually prefer that when they got rid of the visor in like that was the movies that they did that, right? They didn't do it in the last season. Um, I don't know, it's just so kind of like off-putting to me. I don't like there's an episode really early on where Q restores Data's vision, and then he has this character development moment where he's like, no, like I need to like give me the visor back, and I need that
Hmm.
that's part of who I am,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, that
Um,
was
and
interesting.
and I that always kind of stuck with me.
Hmm.
And so like I know that the without the visor, the eyes are like implants still, and it's kind of the same thing, but
Hmm.
um,
Yeah, I think he just
yeah,
changed him because he kept setting off the airport alarm going through with the visor.
is
So
that really what it was?
no,
No,
no.
no.
I mean, it sounds so real. I could see that
I know.
happening.
Sorry, that was my memory delta take on it. There's memory alpha, memory beta, and then there's Michael's
Yeah.
memory delta. So ignore
Oh,
me.
not Delta Shift. Come on. But
Exactly.
just as a non sequitur before we jump into it, I always thought, and I know they talked about it a lot over the 40 odd years of Next Generation, but I remember LeVar Burton from Reading Rainbow and from
Hmm.
Roots, right? And I always thought it was a shame that one of the most powerful tools that he has in his acting, repertoire is his eyes, right? Because he's got such great expressive eyes,
Oh, he
and
does.
for
He
the
does.
and for the entire length of Next Generation, they covered it up by the visor, and he had to find
Wow.
other ways to act around it. It was just fascinating.
See, I felt
Yeah.
the same way about Michael Dorn's forehead.
Yeah. The- His eyes are so expressive. Like you can like just there's so much going on with like his eyebrows above the visor. Like it's
Yeah. Okay. All right. So let's get into our subject for tonight. This is great. You said lower decks, so now you're gonna have to pay for it all night, Alex. But
oh boy. Oh
so
no.
so let me tell you how I met Alex. So uh, there was an advertisement on Modifius's Discord channel by Alex, promoting the Start Playing, which for those of you who might not know, it's an online forum channel wherein you can meet game masters, other players, and jump onto games that are usually conducted over something like Roll20 or Foundry or some of these other ones. Okay, so we'll get
Yeah.
educated about that tonight. So I said, yeah, you know what? I was kind of fiending to be a character. So I'm the forever GM usually. Of course, I write a lot of this stuff just like Jim, and so we don't get a lot of chance to play the mechanics that we write and the stories that we write. So as I'm going to give this a try, I went through and saw Alex's reviews. He had very high reviews. And so I signed up for one of the Friday night games, even got a coworker and his friend to sign up for it. And I had a blast. We played the characters from the quick start guide. And Alex sent actually picked the adventure Gorgon's Gaze. So which was really cool because we had just had uh the writer of that McCarver on the show not too long ago. And so we were able to play through Gorgon's Gaze, and Alex just hit all the sweet spots. If you want to know how well he did, just go read the review I wrote for him on his web page. He'll mention that toward the end of the show. So to this thing, I was like, well, I want more people to play the game. I want more people to GM the game. And what a better way than using technology to facilitate this? And so we wanted to invite Alex on so that we could hear answers to our questions, like what if I want to start running games on on online, and what if I want to be a player? What are some things I should be mindful of? So Alex, taking it from there, why don't you just go ahead and tell us what got you started with running online games?
Yeah. Well, I've been running, so I guess context about me. I do live all the way across the ocean in China, but I have a lot of friends back home. Like I've got friends from high school and stuff that I still play with now, right? And so I really started running on games online for just for them, right? Because they were don't want to GM and they like run games for us. It's like, okay. So I started running games online, and it's like kind of a different experience. I was kind of apprehensive. I'm like, I don't know about online games. Like, I don't like I'd done in-person games basically my whole life, and I thought like that was kind of intrinsic to the experience, but I ended up in some ways liking it quite a lot more. Like it's a slightly different experience than in person, but like um it solved like being online solves like a bunch of problems for me, which I can get into. Um, but yeah, so just kind of casually for them. And then after about maybe like a year and a half of doing that, I was kind of like in between jobs at the time. And one of my friends I was playing with is like, oh, you should just start running this professionally a little bit and see if that takes off. And it's been working out pretty okay so far. And I've been kind of doing that ever since. So yeah, it's just kind of a necessity of I think most people who end up playing online is like their friends or whatever are
Mhm.
spread across the country or something like that. So it's that same kind of story, but um,
Define
I support.
profession. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
I was
No,
gonna say define professionally.
I mean just for money, right? So like
Mhm.
right now it's the only thing that I do. I guess the structurally the way it works is I charge per session. It's usually like $25 per session, and then players can show up either weekly or bi-weekly usually. And yeah, we just kind of run through a campaign. There's a bunch of other stuff like as far as like a job, it's like also very much like a customer service job and a community management job. So like there's running the Discord, there's um, doing kind of following up on making sure there aren't any problems or whatever. It's uh,
Yeah.
marketing as well is like a big thing. Is like you got to like find the people, especially
Mhm.
like paid games are something that a lot of people aren't really used to the idea of, and so you kind of need to find people who are open to that. And
I want to run a
yeah,
promo for you real quick because
yeah,
that,
sure.
that that got me. I saw a price point like, why would I pay someone to run a game for me? But when I think about it, you go to the movies, right? And you pay. How much do you spend for the movies now? $20,
20, yeah,
20
$20. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
easily, right?
yeah,
Plus concessions, yeah.
Oh yeah, the concessions makes it 90. But let's
Mm.
say you just pay for the movie. That's $20, right? And you get an hour and a half, one hit, boom, you're just sitting there vegging out on the movie. You could pay the same amount of money and for 3 hours be the movie. And for
yeah,
people who love storytelling, to me, that's better, or even if you do it once a month, that's what, three Starbucks, right? Three or four
yeah.
Starbucks, the cost of Starbucks now. And so just to let people know, the price point is so, to me, reasonable for doing this. And again, the experience I had that night where I'm like, oh man, right away, I'm like, Alex, I want to play again, trying to look at my schedule when I can do that. I just want people to get over the hump, try it once, and you're going to see, oh, there's definite value in this.
Yeah, yeah. I definitely like people do get a little bit stuck on the price point because it does kind of feel like, especially when you think about a campaign or something like that, if that's what the experience that you want is, it can kind of add up. But I kind of like look for ways to just kind of add value. So I do like uh one shots once a month and just whatever. There's a lot of like little systems that don't really warrant a full campaign that people aren't going to sign up for all the time. So actually the Star Trek one shot that you signed up for was one of those like little one shots that I'll do once a month. And then if you're in like an ongoing campaign of mine, then you just play that. You can play that one shot for free, kind of thing. That's how that works. And so like this month I'm doing Eat the Reich, which is like a vampire game, that kind of stuff. And um, yeah, just looking for like little ways to add value. I haven't started doing this yet, but like looking at getting character art commissioned for people who like are with me for a while, all that kind of little stuff, and kind of like looking for all the ways that you can turn it into kind of a really memorable experience that's like above and beyond what you get out of a paid game, or out of a free game. Um, and oh, it's a different experience for sure. And the price is a thing. But it's fun.
So, Alex, I'm curious. I know that some game masters, especially on Start Playing, I've seen it a couple of different ways, where a game master will say, "Hey, I'm going to run a 23rd century Star Trek game on a Constitution class ship, just like the original series Star Trek. And who wants in?" And you buy into that, and you're off and running. And then other game masters will say, hey, I will run a campaign for you and your group, custom made to whatever specs you want it to be. Tell me what you want, I'll run it for you. Where do you fall on that spectrum? Or are you outside that spectrum, or like what's your angle to that?
Yeah, I've got two answers to this because so by and large, almost all the time, I'm pitching like a really specific adventure that will get started. The reason I'll do that is just because it's easier for people to buy into something when, I mean, like especially on Start Playing, there's so many options, and you got to like find something that makes you stick out. And if you're just like, we're gonna play a campaign and we'll decide what it is when you get here, people are like, well, I don't know what I'm buying into here. So they just pass on it and they find something that's clear, right? And so that's the reason pitch a specific like adventure. Basically, I'd say like the opening situation is, the Enterprise is under attack by Romulans or something, and you are like an engineer. Like I give them like really like you are an engineer who's trapped in the engine room and like all that kind of stuff. I get like really specific with it so that people know exactly what's going to happen in at least session one. But for my Star Trek games that right now, I have just gone, it's a Star Trek game. We're going to decide what air it is when you get here. And so I probably shouldn't have done that, but I couldn't decide.
Well,
And
you use
so
box games too, right? Like you use the module with us. Do you always do that, or do you create your own?
I'll do both. I'll like steal plus from other places. But like I'll kind of like alternate between like box stuff and my own stuff because I can like work on my own stuff in the background while kind of falling behind the pre-written stuff. Pre-written stuff is just faster to prep. But then I also like kind of throw in my own stuff because I have my own ideas as well. Uh, I'll steal ideas from other. So what I did most recently is I took an episode of Doctor Who and I converted it into a Star Trek thing, and it made it completely different because it's different universes and different ways of solving problems. But like just like looking at for like other places to get little idea problems and things like that.
Well, based on the last season, it may not be different universes anymore. Based on the last season of Doctor Who.
Oh, I've not caught up on Doctor Who
Oh,
yet.
sorry, spoiler.
Oh man, that's crazy though.
Oh, Michael. So
It's
Alex, so
okay. I
one
don't
more
mind.
one more question for you off the cuff, and then we'll jump into some of the outline stuff that we've got here. Just curious because I'm sure some of our viewers will be curious. I know some of them just anecdotally. I've heard some of them want to get into game mastering, either as a side gig or as their full-time situation. Being that you mentioned that this is your full-time deal right now. Have you like just getting into the weeds about the minutia? Like, have you set yourself up as a sole proprietor or LLC or anything? Like, hey, like, is this your business in terms of like, this is your actual business, or is this
Yeah.
more of like a side gig for you?
I mean, it's the only thing I'm doing right now. I haven't actually set up a business yet, though. I'll need to do that soon. But yeah, no, right now it's just I guess just payments coming in, but not like actually set up as an official business yet. Um,
It
No, it's
does
I'll have
cool.
to
help.
look into that, do that.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't help. It does help that you live in a foreign country. Would it be harder to do this if you were in North America?
Maybe there is some weird tax stuff that I need to figure out there. I don't know how that works. Um, yeah,
Well,
Got it.
fortunately, because you're doing this, every Star Trek adventure book you buy is a tax write-off, so that's really nice.
yeah.
And
I
your
think
time on
about
the
that
show is
quite a lot.
probably the amount of bandwidth you're using for this episode would probably be written off somehow, some way. Get yourself a good tax accountant. All right, cool. Well, let's jump into some of these questions we've got here. So, like, we're talking about talking about playing online, and you mentioned how it's nice to have. You said there are some advantages to playing online versus playing in person, right? So let's dig into that a little bit. Tell us what are some of the joys and challenges of playing online versus playing face to face that you've experienced.
Yeah. Well, like I'll start with playing face to face and like what I love about that. So like with face to face, it's usually with people that like I've just met through friends or I met them at a bar or like whatever. Like you just find people of similar interest and you like eventually invite them to a game and kind of you just show up and you have some drinks and you have some food and um my in-person games are a little bit like beer and pretzel style, I guess, because people are there's cross chatter going on while the game is going on. Sometimes we get like rather large groups and people kind of split off and have side conversations sometimes. And sometimes even like a little bit longer too. So like you might, you might meet for 5 hours and play for three of those because we have like 2 hours of, an hour of people filing in at the beginning and having conversations, and an hour of hanging out after. And it's kind of very casual. It's very much like people are there to hang out with their friends, and the game happens to be the medium in which that happens, right? And online games. Uh, are a little bit more formal than that. And the biggest reason for that is that on video chat, it's very hard for two people. You can't have a side conversation, right? There's usually just one person talking at a time, and everybody else kind of needs to kind of pay attention and uh, just listen. And so that changes a lot of things. Um, one of them just being like pacing. In an in-person game, you can kind of waffle around for an hour as people just have side conversations and like kind of make their plans, and like it can still feel exciting. But if you spend an hour just kind of like chatting, even in character or something online, it can feel a little bit slow because most of the time, most people aren't having those side conversations and they're just waiting for their turn to participate. And so with the online game, I'm much snappier about moving the camera around, making sure that everybody's being prompted to say something like every 5 minutes or so that they're not drifting off
Yeah,
very early on.
you
Like,
did an excellent job of that too. I have to say in our game, that
yeah,
was one of the things I remarked is that everyone felt constantly having to pay attention because of
yeah,
how you cut the scenes or cut what you said, moving the camera. And
yeah.
so very skilled at doing that. And that made my first experience doing that super fun.
Yeah, yeah. That's a really important skill. Is just like keep moving the camera. My thing, my kind of reminder to do that is basically I'll keep a scene going until I've run out of it because I'll improvise a lot. So I'll keep a scene going until I've run out of ideas for what's going to happen, and I'll be like, "Oh, we're gonna put a pin on this until I can think of something later," and then we'll go to what somebody else is doing.
Hmm.
And yeah,
Yeah, that really makes it feel like the TV show though, right? Because like the TV show doesn't have time to linger, right? Like you got to
yeah,
keep moving the plot and the story forward and moving the character moments forward, and all that. Not to say it's bad necessarily. Like I love character fat, right? I love chewing up the scenery with other players as characters, but like in the interest of keeping the momentum going and the storyline going, you just cut and move. Michael, I know you're
yeah,
really good at that too. Just like keeping things sharp and moving, and once you feel like the scene is either coming to a natural end or it's just kind of like grinding along, you're like, okay, we're gonna cut here and we're gonna move on, and we'll come back to you in a few minutes and just keep it going. So it's cool to hear that you had that same experience with Alex.
yeah,
Yeah, and
yeah,
the advice part of what Alex did too was if there was a cut scene, he allowed space when the character reintroduced in the next scene to say, what were you doing in that span of time? So you have that opportunity to still not lose motivation or some direction, and I thought that was
yeah,
super helpful.
yeah.
What do
Yeah, it's just
you
all part of setting the scene.
Yeah, now so that's before we get into setting the scene, let's just talk about setting up the mic and the cameras. Because
Right.
what do people need to come in to be prepared so that they make sure that everybody has a good quality gaming experience?
Yeah, I feel like you don't need to buy anything expensive, but having the biggest thing that you can do to make your kind of online experience better is buy an external mic, because the mic on your laptop is usually not good enough. Um, and it's got all kinds of metal in between you and the mic, and it's just you're gonna they come across really muffled a lot of the time. And there are cheap mics here, and I want to say that basically almost any external mic that you can get somewhat close to your mouth is going to be like 100 times improvement. That's the biggest thing that you want to do. Um, and if you can do that, then that's usually enough.
Well, what if
Um,
someone uses a Bluetooth like headset? Is that good enough?
I've never seen that happen before, but like it's going to be better than whatever mic is in your laptop for sure. But I mean, if it's Bluetooth and connecting to the laptop, maybe I've never seen it happen before.
Okay,
I
just
guess I
curious.
guess you could
Yeah,
potentially run into some network issues there, right? Like if the Bluetooth is having trouble picking up the network, or if your network craps out or something, then
yeah.
you get into issues.
I'd probably stick to something that's going to plug in via via USB, and that way you know it's going to stay connected and not have as
Yeah.
many problems there.
Well,
Just the
because it would totally,
reliability.
yeah, it would totally suck too if like it's great for the first 2 hours and it runs out of power and then it craps out the
Yeah,
last hour of play.
yeah, yeah. But yeah, just like almost any external mic will be great. As far as external cameras, if you want to look good on camera, that that can get a little bit pricey sometimes. But like,
Are you
I'm not
saying
using.
are you saying my Logitech's making me look like crap? Is that what you're saying?
No, no, you look great. I was just about to recommend a Logitech because they've got those these ones. Yeah,
That's exactly
and
what I'm using right now.
yeah, yeah, they're really really good. And they make people look amazing for really not that much money.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, if that's, but I feel like most people can tolerate like not very good video. Like people don't really care about how the video looks that much very often time. But like if you're not sounding, if you're like if we can't hear you, then it's a huge impact on the experience. So fix the audio first.
Well, I even
Hmm.
appreciated that you said people had the option, if I remember correctly, to be on camera, right? Didn't you give that option? If I,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. It's
okay.
I usually highly recommend it. Like I think it makes your experience will be better if you are on camera. But not everybody's comfortable with that. And the audio is the important part.
Interesting. So we've had a couple of other game masters on the show in the past who've done shows for or who've run games for other people, and I think most of them have done it as kind of like I'm running this for you. It's our private thing. We're not going to record it. We're not going to put it up on an actual play. We're not going to re-record it and put it on Twitch with all the bells and whistles and stuff. Although I think we may have had one at one point who did the whole overlay thing and the
Yeah.
uniforms and the high production values and all that stuff. And I know, having been on social media following the game for a number of years now, I know that there is a certain subset of newer players, newer gamers coming into not just the hobby, but also into Star Trek, who are really intimidated by the high production values of certain shows and certain groups out
Mm.
there that are like doing the full blown uniforms and LCARS overlays and all this stuff. And they're like, we have Logitech cameras and internal mics, and we're making the best of it, and we're using our little virtual tabletop maps and stuff, kind of dragging them around. So like, what's your advice to somebody who like wants a good experience but may not have the means to get all the bells and whistles together?
Yeah. I mean, if you just want to join a game, like the internal mic on the laptop and the internal camera will do the job and it'll be fine. Actually, I should have led with that. Is that is enough to play. And I guess with buying an external mic, is like, yeah, that's kind of like the first upgrade that you might want to consider. But only if you're doing it like all the time, I would say. Uh, but if you have a laptop, then you have enough, and that really is kind of enough to just start playing, and nobody's going to like judge you for how you look or um, yeah, as long as you're speaking clearly, it should be fine.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's great. And so then talking about, like a presentation and how you're actually going about playing the game, I guess that naturally segues into the next question about like what kind of virtual tabletop are you using, or are you using one, right? Like I know a lot of folks
Yeah.
use just Discord. And some folks like Michael, just play by post. You don't even use audio or video. You're just doing play by text. But for your purposes, Alex, on Start Playing, I know Start Playing. Well, actually, I don't know, but if I remember right, in doing my little bit of research and thinking about being a game master for it, it doesn't have its own native
No.
tabletop system, right? It just kind of relies on the game master to decide what are you using and how are you
Yeah.
going to
Well,
use it.
everybody has a different style, right? So
Yeah.
like, some people are doing play by post on Start Playing. It's usually like, you pay $20 one time, just get into the room, and then you're in a play by post game. Um, but as far as like virtual tabletops, I do sometimes use them based on the system. Um, and I'm not usually using them because I want like a really kind of elaborate kind of thing with a lot of automation or like a lot of uh, special effects or anything like that. I'm usually using a virtual tabletop if the game is tactile. I want to say tactile. Like there's certain games where feeling the piece in front of you makes a big difference in kind of keeping track of what's going on, or even just focusing the attention. So for Star Trek, I do use it because I find basically the only reason I use a VTT for Star Trek is that I write down the name of a trait on like a little sticky note, and I want everybody to see that. And I put the sticky note up, and it just having that there makes people think about it. Like when players are playing really any game, they'll do this thing. You look at the player, they say, "Well, what do you want to do?" And they'll look down at their character sheet because they don't know what they want to do. But if they look at their character sheet, they might see a word that says like, "Oh, I'm good at pickpocketing. Does pickpocketing apply to the situation?" That kind of thing, right? And so there's a visual prompt in front of them that gives them ideas for how to participate. And by putting like a physical note in front of them of like, hey, there's a ion nebula here, and that's a trait, right? Um, then that gives them ideas on how can I participate using the ion nebula, or how can I participate using this trait or that trait, and having that physical piece there reinforces that because it gives them reference points that kind of grounds them into the experience. And for Star Trek specifically, I do that. And I don't do it for every game, but that's kind of the main reason. And I'll also use VTTs for like if I just want a whiteboard. Sometimes I doodle, sometimes I don't doodle. But I'm usually looking for like the most simple experience that I can get with a VTT, something that's very little more than just like a whiteboard with magnets on it. If there's anything more than that, it's usually too much.
Yeah,
Mm.
and of course the dice roller is always nice to have there.
Yeah, yeah. The dice roller, I usually I do trust people just rolling dice if they roll dice on their desk and they tell me what they rolled, that's also fine. I don't have a problem with that. But sometimes it is nice to kind of share what you're rolling with people, particularly if you're teaching people. If you got new players, they don't know how to play. I definitely kind of want to walk them through like, uh, okay, well this dice doesn't count, that one does, that kind of thing.
Mhm. Yeah, I find that I know when Michael and I have played Captain's Log or when we're playing Star Trek, I think we pretty much just roll. We don't use an app or a die roller or anything. We just do. You just trust us to do it. And I've always long believed like if someone's coming to a game to play the game and they want to cheat at their dice, then okay, if that's the kind of experience you want, I'm not gonna I'm not gonna
Yeah,
second guess it, right? Like just tell
yeah,
me what your results are. I don't, we'll
yeah,
fit it into the narrative one way or another.
Yeah,
yeah.
they can't stop me from spending threat.
Exactly. And creating a bunch of
Yeah.
complications. Cool. Excellent. Let's see what's so we've covered virtual tabletops, which is great. As a game master, do you I guess playing with Start Playing, you don't necessarily have the same group coming in, especially because you're doing primarily one shots, right? Right, Alex? Do you have a
Mhm.
lot of like new people coming in, game session after game session after game session? And if so, like what's the experience like playing with a bunch of people that you don't know versus
Yeah.
playing with a group that's consistent from period to period?
Yeah. Well, okay. Well, I'll make a little. So most of my players are repeat. 'Cause, like retention, it takes a little while to like fill a table. Like it can sometimes take a couple months to fill a table. And so once you get that table filled, you got it. You want them to keep coming back. Retention is really important. And that kind of that for getting that first experience so that they're kind of hooked and kind of want to come back. I shouldn't say hooked. That sounds like so predatory. Um, but making sure that.
We're Feringis here. It's okay.
Yeah.
Repeat customers are very, very important. Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah. It's hugely important. So most of the people I am seeing like every week, um, and in a couple of cases they'll even join in like more than one campaign. But then the one shots are kind of my outreach of like kind of putting feelers out into new ideas of like is this kind of campaign going to work, that kind of thing. And but but I can answer the question about what it's like playing with strangers. And the answer is that it's a little bit weird for about 2 sessions. Um, and then after that, the chemistry kind of starts to build up. And some groups they just don't have chemistry, but usually that solves itself by people not continuing. But most of the time, if you build a kind of a safe environment where people are comfortable being themselves, some kind of chemistry will kind of develop between the group, at least in character, but usually also out of character, and people kind of warm up to each other. And it's all about creating that safe environment for people. Um, Playing with strangers can be weird because you're afraid of kind of saying the wrong thing. You don't know who they are. Like, oh, what if I say something that's a little bit political and they end up being weird about that? Or like, what if uh what if I embarrass myself in front of them or whatever? And all of that ties back into creating a safe play space. Safety tools are a huge part of that. But also just anytime somebody does something, just reaffirming that what they're doing is like not wrong, or they're not like, you know, making sure that people don't feel like they're being dumb because they're not being dumb. And uh, just being friendly is a huge huge part of it. Like as if you're hosting a game with strangers, you got to step up and just kind of get over your own awkwardness and just smile to people and take an interest in them, and uh, kind of open yourself up as well. And you can talk about your personal life or whatever as well, and that helps people feel more comfortable. But it's
Well,
about 2 sessions in order to get over that first hump of awkwardness for me.
well, we had weirdness then because whatever concoction you put together, I thought our session was amazing. Like our group jumped in,
Yeah.
and I think you even
Well,
remarked on it at the end. And a lot of what I felt you did was make it so safe. Like your explanation at the beginning about the safety tools and what we're not going to jump into and go into, I know made me feel very safe because I'm a very PG, happy ending kind of player when it comes to Star Trek, you know.
yeah.
And so I know for me that made it right off the bat where I'm like, oh, I am going to have a ball in this because I know everyone's going to respect this rule set.
Yeah, yeah. Well, your group, I mean, you had some of your coworkers or your friends join with you, and
Yeah,
so that
one.
helped a lot.
Mhm.
Like when you, even if you have if you got like a group of 5 people and 2 of them know each other, that's a huge deal because they are open with each other, and that makes everybody else feel more open as well, right? That makes a huge difference. And so by the end of that session, I kind of lost track of like who your friends were. Or you're all friends by the end, right? Because I think the other, you were being really open and kind of I mentioned earlier that it's important for the host to like be friendly and open up to kind of help other people open up. But like in that case, you were also doing that very well, and it made it way easier on me.
Well, I
So
want to
thank
give
you.
something. I want to give a big warning too, because we have a lot of GMs that may jump in and decide to like come play your game or play another game. One thing I especially do when I sit down at other games, especially since they know I'm involved with writing the game, I do not insist on my rules, and I am not the raw officiator. And so I think I just want to give that to other people. If you're joining the game and you happen to know the game really well, I'm always like, back off the game master. Don't be a rules grognard. Chill
Yeah,
out. Don't intimidate. Because I was at a Gen Con once and I actually had to walk away from a table just because I went to observe. Someone recognized me. And now that just paralyzed the GM, turning around and asking me questions like every turn. I'm like, I'm out of here. Bye. Have peace. Have fun. so,
yeah,
so I do want to tell for players who happen to play the game and are jumping in, um, don't step back. Just let people enjoy running the game.
yeah, yeah. That's usually, in session 0, if you're doing like a longer game, that's one of the things is like, hey, I'm gonna get things wrong. We can talk about it after the game, not while we're playing. And yeah,
Great. And then just on that topic, then when you're talking about just good game mastering advice, not just for Star Trek, but just in general doing the start playing and game mastering. What other nuggets did you picked up along the way, like in terms of I guess one thing that I've noticed over the over the many years is that some games, like being a game master, is a lot of work. Like and I think not that I don't love Dungeons and Dragons, but I remember 3.5 and 4.0, like they had a whole app that helps you structure encounters and like get the math right so that if you had a certain party with a certain power level, then you were trying to build encounters to meet that power level. And I mean
it doesn't even work.
I was spending like 5 6 hours a week just pre-planning the encounters, which inevitably my players would find a way to circumvent, right? So
Yeah,
I'd
yeah,
have all that hours of stat blocks and math and gathering the miniatures and all that stuff, and it just all went to waste. And I was like, okay, this is not ideal. So just in your experience, then, what would be your encouragements to people that are thinking about game mastering but feeling intimidated by the amount of work ahead of them?
yeah. Okay, so people are new to game mastering. So it's to specifically address what you mentioned with all the prep. Like, don't play D&D because D&D is a high prep game. Like, I'm not saying that, to be clear, I am running D&D games right now, right? Like I'm still doing that. But it is a high prep system. in my experience, for the reason that you just said, is that there's lots of little things that you got to move around, and lots of little numbers that are kind of, you got to reference from a page in a book that's 300 pages long, and it's a lot of work to put it all together before a game starts, and then your players might just like walk past it and not get involved at all, and that sucks. And there's lots of little ways that, like, if people who play a lot of D&D, they'll be like, oh well, you can just reuse it later. They have like 101 techniques in order to save time on prep, but like that's a D&D thing. Other games don't need 101 tips to save time on prep because they're structured differently, and that's not to, it's not to, talk ill of D&D or whatever. Like, it's a fine game. It's just, but that there's a particular style going on there, and I would say that it is the reason that people are intimidated by GMing is basically just because of that reputation of like that one game kind of, it takes a lot of skill to run that game. But there are other games that make it way easier. I actually think that Star Trek is actually a pretty good place to jump in. All the 2D20 games are. I played the first 2D20 game I played was Fallout, and the GM, like, I swear to God, did not know any of the rules. Like, had not, I had maybe like glanced through the rule book, but like just did not know what they were doing. But they handed out, Fallout has the best quick reference sheets that you can hand out to the players in their like quick start thing. And I just like, I picked up that one page. It's two-sided, and I looked at it and I'm like, I know how to play as a player now, and I know how to play it better than the GM does right now. And it was fine because the GM, all they have to think about is like, a difficulty between 1 to 5, which is very intuitive for anybody, like 1 to 5 stars, and then just kind of think about the consequences narratively. Like, that's almost everything. Like, all the stuff with like spending threat is a skill, and like using traits and things like that in Star Trek is a skill. But like, if you can think of a difficulty between 1 to 5, and then you can, say if you do that, then this happens narratively, then you can run Star Trek. That's all you need to get started.
Well,
And
heck, Jim, we should
yeah.
cut that as a commercial because that was probably the best rules explanation I've ever heard.
I love it. That's great.
Yeah,
Perfect.
it's really good. And so yeah, start with narrative games. Start with like Star Trek, and there are other games I might recommend as well. But I guess this is a Star Trek show, so it's a good it is a good place to start. You just need to know 1 to 5. That's
It's cool. You mentioned two Modifius products, so you won't get anyone mad here.
All good. Michael, any other questions that you can think of that we should hit Alex with?
Yeah. So, I mean, first of all, before we ask any questions, is there anything, Alex, from what we talked, you want to get a point out that you haven't had a chance to yet?
Let me just double check. Kind of like looking over notes. I think we're pretty thorough this time, I feel like, but
Yeah, and I want
maybe
people to
not.
know everything they've observed with Alex here so far is exactly how he runs the game. It's this mellow, laid back, very comfortable, and a lot of fun. So again, I'm going to recommend him. If you need the first experience, I recommend Alex to be your first. So 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 let me ask you this: what do you think is the future of this when it comes to, there's start playing, there's Foundry, there's there's a lot of these
Hmm. Hmm.
different. So where do you want the future to go? Where do you think it's going? What can people look forward to?
Mm. So, I mean, role playing as a hobby still seems to be growing as far as I can tell, right? And other and there's no sign that it's going to stop. So I do expect that as like more different audiences kind of come into the hobby, there's going to be kind of more demand for different kinds of experiences. I don't think that like people are still going to be doing the beer and pretzels D&D game that they've always done. Like, I still run casual games with my friends in person here. Actually, two. I've got a group here in China that I play with just casually, and I've got a group like just high school friends that I play with casually, and those are still going, and those are just, I'm still doing that. Um, the paid experiences, though, I think are going to kind of start being like if you have a birthday coming up, and you're like, what do I want to do for my birthday? Well, I had to try running like a really like pay somebody to run a complicated game for you that you don't want to learn, like Lancer or something like that, or something that like you find kind of intimidating, and kind of have this kind of big experience kind of built around it. And I kind of expect that to become more and more of a thing,
I
especially
really
as
love that.
people come in, new people come into the hobby.
I love that idea because not everyone can get to a Gen Con or their local gaming convention
Yes,
and try a
yes,
game out. And now that I think about it, there are games I've wanted to play before. I should start, looking around and seeing one if it's available on something like Start Playing, or even ask somebody like an Alex, hey, can you run it so I can learn it so I can be a GM? Like
yeah.
almost co-GMing with somebody just to learn how to run the game, right?
Yeah, that is totally a thing of like, I mean, as somebody who isn't always wanting to play the Dragon game anymore, like it is hard to find people who are like find a group for something obscure. Um, and but there's groups there are other people online that you can find to play it, and I think that people gravitate more and more towards those like online experiences, at least not necessarily all paid or anything like that, but I think online games are going to become more and more a thing as we move on, and more people kind of come into the hobby and want to find people who are looking for their kind of specific niche interest. For a long time, the RPG hobby was just like fantasy. And so people who are interested in fantasy could find each other. But as more and more genres come in, like, um, even stuff that's really different, like Girl by Moonlight, which is like a Sailor Moon RPG, right? If somebody's like, I always want to play Sailor Moon, I'm not interested in the swords and the dragons. I just want to be Sailor Moon. Like you might have a hard time finding the people to play that, but like if you go online, there's gonna be a Discord community, and you can just like gather some players there, and the online play culture is still kind of developing, and I think there's kind of rules of etiquette that are still people are still figuring out, but over time that'll become, I think, more and more of a thing.
So
Yeah,
yeah, and that's true. I mean, for instance, I'm going to be traveling to Kansas City this week for work, and I have time to kill one of the nights. I'm like, what am I going to do? And so I went ahead and joined. Someone's going to be running from our group RPG game online. I'm like, oh, well, that's a great thing to do. So if you're
yeah,
traveling, have time to kill, look if you can find something in your time zone, and then jump on and do it. So this is my way of finally being a player. I can actually jump into these.
yeah. That's totally a thing.
How can
Uh,
people? Oh, go ahead,
I
Jim.
went, I went another direction. I'm planning on reach when I go to Minnesota for the holidays. I'm going to reach out to some of the local game stores there and see if there's any openings to run a one shot, just to jump into the local gaming meta such as it is, and see if anyone's interested in trying out a game or something.
Yeah, I guess like so like after Amazon becomes a thing, is like game stores start have been closing, as far as I know. Like they, they've been kind of struggling a little bit to kind of keep up with the online market, and I think that's really unfortunate. But there's almost like, I almost feel like there's this gap where like a lot of stores start closing, or they're not staffed as well or whatever, and as people are kind of online more and they're playing more video games at home or something like that, the kind of play culture around a game store kind of falls away a little bit. And there's this kind of this gap where the online culture has kind of started, game stores are struggling a little bit more, and there's kind of, where do you find a game? And I think 20 years ago is like, well, you go to the game store and you find a game. You just stand around and look at books until you like find somebody else who's standing around and just looking at books. Then you'd be like, do you are you interested? Do you like these books? And
Boy, you make it sound so creepy. You make my skin crawl.
I didn't mean to make it creepy, but like I think like especially after post COVID and stuff like that, of kind of there's a new kind of culture of people just going online and finding each other in a slightly different way than they were 10, 15 years ago. um and yeah, no, that's exciting just to see people finding games and finding communities in new ways.
All right. And how can people find you? This is a chance to plug yourself.
Yeah.
People get your pens, paper, write this down.
Okay, so I'm on Twitter, and you can find me at Mr. Alex Boer. Boer spelled Boer. And then if you want to sign up for my games, I'm on startplaying.games /GM/GM Alex. And that's how you can find me.
And if you're on the Discord server, your games get actually promoted on there. That's where I
On
first found you, right?
I do post my games, the Star Trek games at least, on the Modiphius server as well. And so you can find my stuff there. Sometimes I have to double check to make sure I put the most recent ones there. But yeah, you can find my
I
stuff
think
there.
you're allowed to do it on the Facebook Star Trek Adventures Facebook page too. I think that's within the rule guidelines.
I will look there. I'm not on
Yeah.
Facebook as much anymore.
I know there's a lot of us. Yeah, it's for us
Oh,
old
there's a
people.
lot? Okay, well then I'm definitely going there.
It's for us old people that we still use Facebook. I don't have a Tweezer or Instacart or whatever it is.
Yeah.
All right. So what we do, Alex, we always close our shows with gratitude. So I'll go ahead and launch it. My gratitude, of course, goes to you because I had an amazing online playing experience that is officially dropped the wall from me on being afraid to do it. So you made it very comfortable. I definitely will be coming back for more. I wish I could have time for a bi-weekly game, but I don't yet. I could do a monthly for sure, but I'm definitely going to try to get on to future start playing and encourage other people who we see people all the time like I'm looking for a game. I want to try this. I'm not sure how to run this. I'm going to be like, go to start playing and give it a try. You'll be able to see it live. You can participate. So thank you so much for making it the best experience for me. Alex, what about you? Gratitude?
I mean, I'm very thankful to be here right now. I guess that's the obvious one. But thank you to both of you for making me feel so comfortable here. I was really nervous actually kind of coming into this. I'm always really nervous when I'm presenting myself, but yeah, I feel very comfortable talking to you guys now, and I'm very thankful for that.
You're
And
so mellow. You've just joined
yeah.
our coffee table. We're just like a coffee house when
I don't know. I was really nervous. And all that's melted away. And so thank you so much for kind of being so friendly and making this such a lovely conversation.
Yeah, I mean, like Michael always says, we're continually talking about Star Trek and Star Trek Adventures and gaming and everything else, and it's just like a continuing conversation. And we make the table bigger for people who join us, and we just get them into the chat and super casual, no drama, no egos, just talking fun stuff. So thank you for being here, Alex. Really appreciate it. My gratitude tonight goes out to you and to all the other game masters who are out there running the game online, running the game at conventions, running the game just wherever you're running the game, just getting the word out there, showing gamers that there are lots of games out there to play, not just Star Trek, not just Dungeons and Dragons, but there are thousands and thousands of RPGs out there now. We are in such a golden age of RPGs between the indies on itch.io and all the other games that are out there right now. It's just an absolute smorgasbord of possibilities. And I tell you, I know Michael and I have joked about it in the past, but like whoever figures out the killer app for gaming to like aggregate all the different virtual tabletops and all the start playings and stuff into one place so that all those little niche games that you were talking about, Alex, that have 10 people around the world who want to play it, they can actually find a way to connect and play the game together, right?
Yeah.
That would be amazing. I'm sure we'll get there eventually. We're not quite there yet, but someday someone's going to figure that out and make it happen. But thanks to you, Alex, for running the game and for being here, being our guest. Great to chat with you for an hour about all your insights and experience. I've certainly learned some stuff. Hopefully, our listeners will learn too. Hope we get you back real soon. Hope you're willing to come back and chat with us about all things Star Trek and Star Trek Adventures.
Yeah, I'd love to.
That's right. And just in case you ever do run one of those niche games, Alex, call me when you start the My Little Pony RPG. I've been dying to play it. I've watched it at a game. All right.
I might.
Let me know. I'm a brony. All right. So, until next time, people, IDIC.
Live long and prosper. Be safe, be well. We'll talk to you all next time.